The prophet Amos is a fascinating figure. Our Haftorah is taken from the second chapter of Amos, and the first chapter comprises 8 different prophecies in which Amos directs critique to all of the surrounding neighbors of the northern kingdom. In the 8th century, in which Amos prophesizes, the kingdoms are already divided between Yehuda and Yisrael, Yisrael being in the north and the Shomron, and they experience a time of prosperity, of material wealth. And with that comes a sense of social injustice, that they take advantage of the poor and the indigent in order to build their wealth even further. Amos critiques that culture in a very piercing and sharp way, but the strategy that he uses to get their attention is first to critique the surrounding nations that are in competition with Israel, because Amos struggles to get the attention of Israel, of the northern kingdom, and figures that this would be a creative strategy. Just like when I'm trying to get the attention of one of my children, I'll often speak to one of their siblings, which provokes their curiosity and makes them listen up even more. So that's the setting in which we pick up with our Haftorah this morning. I'll share the screen here so we can read a few psukim and appreciate the specifics and then the link between our Parsha and our Haftorah. Ko amar Hashem al shlosha pishei Yisrael v'al arba'a lo ashivenu. Amos says that you've sinned 3 major sins, but on the 4th, I cannot forgive you. So what are those 3 major sins? The commentaries suggest that maybe they are the cardinal sins of Giloy Arayot, Shvichut Damim, and Avodah Zarah. And Hashem is even willing to look the other way to forgive those, but on the 4th sin, he cannot. Why not? Because that 4th sin is about the decomposition of civil society, in which morality and ethics have eroded to the point where people are taking advantage of people in such dehumanizing and degrading ways. The example that is brought of that is Al Michram Bekesef Tzadik Ve'evyon Ba'avor Na'alayim, that the wealthy are growing their portfolios by buying other Jews with money to serve as their indentured servants. Good, simple Jews who might have debt are on the market for becoming servants, and the wealthy amass multiple servants and also buy poor people who have no other way to support themselves by trading them or bartering them for their shoes. So it's one thing to buy a slave or a servant for money, but it's another to do so for shoes. And here we see a downward sort of spiral of the way in which the wealthy sought to dehumanize the poor class for their own benefit. It is worse to trade for something as lowly as shoes than it is to purchase for money. Now, of course, this example of selling a tzaddik for money and for shoes should ring a bell and a narrative in our Parsha, and Chazal connect the dots to say that this critique that Amos is giving to the Jewish people in the 8th century is referencing the sin of the brothers in Parshat Vayeshev, who first sell Yosef and then sell him perhaps a second time. The first time is for money and the second time is for shoes. And this is an act of belittling their little brother to a place in which he feels worthless. When he was put in the pit and left to die, that was bad enough. But then they sold him for money and then for goods. And they used the money to purchase new shoes for themselves, or they actually got shoes as the sale price or as the trading commodity for their brother Yosef. And of course, there is some poetic justice and irony in that he wore the most beautiful tunic, the katonet pasim, the striped garment, which was a royal garment. And here his whole life is being reduced to the value of shoes, which are treaded upon and lowly, are just there for the function of protecting the bottom of our feet from sharp things. So we see that the sin of the brothers is repeated later on in Jewish history in a way that shows the moral bankruptcy of the northern kingdom. And this is a very sharp and piercing critique that catches their attention. And even though they don't listen right away, it does help propel them to appreciate their shortcomings. And all of us who live in a time of great prosperity should be so conscientious of how we treat those who are less fortunate, and certainly not engage in anything that is degrading or dehumanizing to the other. With that lesson in mind, I'll wish everyone a wonderful rest of the day and a happy early Thanksgiving.